And hello, everybody, and thank you for joining this webinar on how self-care is the foundation of self-worth. And I know a few of you who are watching know me, and so thank you for coming back to support me and my work and for tuning into this topic, which I believe is, I believe it's the foundation of our relationship with ourselves, of having a healthy relationship with ourselves, and which I believe is the foundation of having a healthy relationship with others. Just briefly, a little bit about me. If you don't know me, I am a coach. I'm a dating and relationships coach and a midlife mentor. My mission is to help you love yourself, create a life that you love, and find love if you don't have love, or to stay in love, because I know once we're in love, if we tend to self-sabotage ourselves, we can wreck lovely relationships. I'm also the author of How to Fall in Love, a 10-step journey to the heart, which looks like that, and that is really relevant to what we're going to talk about today, about self-care. So I want to talk about, first of all, I want to talk about the opposite of self-care, which I will call self-harm. And I'd like to talk about my experience of self-harm. And this summit is organised for those who are childless, not by choice, who are struggling with infertility, be that social infertility because we haven't met somebody to be in a relationship with, or physical infertility. Or people who haven't met somebody in time to have children. And my self-harm is a major factor in my childlessness. So my story of childlessness, like your story, if that is your story, is complex. But briefly, there was a number of elements to it: self-harm and not loving myself, not valuing myself, not believing in myself, not being authentic in my work and my life. They were major factors in not finding a relationship in time to have children. There's another factor in my story, which is my own ambivalence around having children, my own uncertainty about whether that was right for me. And that goes right back to my childhood and how I was parented, and the vision, the picture that I had of parenthood from my own experience of it being the child. So there were a few factors to my own story. When I finally learned to love myself enough and to care for myself enough to build the solid foundations required in order to find love, I was 43, and I fell for a man who didn't want children. And I believe that's how it was meant to be. I believe that I was always ambivalent about children, and that that there was another path for me. There was another journey for me. If you're interested in more about my story, I did another webinar, which is recorded and available at weareworthysummit.com, about I can't remember the title of it. I have one on accepting the unacceptable. So about coming to terms with a life that isn't the life that we hoped that we would have or that we imagined for ourselves. So that goes further into my story. And the other one was on how self-love can help us to find love. So again, that goes into more of my story. So this is about self-care. And I imagine that you are here because self-care is something that you might struggle with. And that doesn't mean that you're constantly harming yourself. It means that you know on occasion that you act against your best interests. You do things that are harming to yourself. That could be pushing yourself too hard, running too fast, not pausing to relax and restore and renew and to feel your feelings, not eating well, getting into relationships that aren't good for you, not sleeping well. There are all manner of ways in which we might not be caring for ourselves. And And I believe that if we can truly care for ourselves and truly love ourselves, that will hugely contribute to our sense of self-worth. And if you are childless and don't want to be, and wanted to have children, I believe this question of self-worth is very important. I think, you know, if we already had low self-worth, if we already had low self-esteem, then not having children will totally exacerbate that feeling of not being good enough, not feeling equal to others, feeling that we're less than. And in my promotional video for these talks, I talked about, you know, that I really do know that feeling. I know how it feels to walk into a room of women with children or women who are pregnant, a room of toddlers, or even if the children aren't there, to walk into a room of mothers. I know how it feels to walk into that room and feel less than, to feel that I have missed out on something, to feel that my life isn't equal or worthy, to feel that they're judging me, to feel that they're pitying me, that I missed out on this thing that they've all done, this miracle. So I know how that feels. And I also know how it feels to walk into that same room and to own my journey and to own my story and to believe in the path that I have taken and to believe that I am equal, that I am worthy, that no matter my circumstances or no matter what I have or don't have in my life, that I am valuable, that I am worthy, that I am an equal human being, that I am just as much a woman as they are women, even if I haven't given birth. And if I'm honest, that's difficult to say because it's difficult to believe. But I believe that if we can get to that place where we can believe that I'm just as much a woman, just as valuable and valid, my life is just as meaningful. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that if we can get to that place and truly believe it, then life will be a whole lot easier. It'll be a whole lot easier. So if I believe that we will struggle even more with that scenario of being in a room full of women if we have a really, you know, if we have a faulty relationship with ourselves, if we have low self-esteem and low self-worth, if we don't entirely believe in ourselves. And I believe that there is a path, there is a journey that we can go on to improve our self-esteem and our self-worth. And it begins with self-care. It begins with identifying our needs and meeting them, which sometimes requires courage. It requires going against the grain. It requires changing habits of a lifetime. I know that's not easy, but that's sometimes what it requires. So let me tell you a little bit about why I find this topic really important and why I wasn't caring for myself in the past. So I mentioned I was self-harming. I was binge eating. I began by starving in my early, around 10, 11, 12, and trying to avoid food for deep reasons, deep reasons about my childhood, my parents' divorce, my dad leaving, feeling not good enough, feeling I needed to be thinner, needing a way to escape my pain, to numb my feelings. So I began by starving, and then I began binge eating around 16. And that binge eating and starving and compulsively exercising and compulsively running and trying to lose the weight that I just put on with the binge, that continued till my early 30s, so several decades. And that was an act of self-harm. That was an act of self-harm, and I had to understand why I was harming myself. Because what I was doing was I was stuffing my feelings. I was trying to numb them by stuffing them with food. I was telling myself, this sounds quite harsh, I was telling myself to shut up because I had things I wanted to say. I had things I wanted to voice. I had feelings that I wanted to get out. I had truth that I wanted to share. But I was like sometimes harried mothers do to their children in the supermarket. They feed them things to stop them crying. I was stuffing myself to shut myself up. So that's harming, that is really harming. So I was numbing, I was hiding, and I also had anger, and my anger, I turned it inwards. So I was harming myself with food. Over the years, I harmed myself in lots of other ways. So I abused alcohol. I began binge drinking at 14. I had a lot of incidents of throwing up, of getting into dodgy situations, really harming my body with excessive alcohol, and then getting myself into scrapes. I harmed myself in relationships with people who didn't treat me as valuable, who harmed me in some way or undermined me, or I put myself in dangerous situations. I also harmed myself through my work. So I was compulsively striving to achieve, trying to fill the void that I felt on the inside with some sort of external acclaim or some affirmation, validation from the outside. So I was compulsively working because I didn't feel good enough. And I was harming myself because I was pushing myself into the ground. I was exhausted. I was, because I needed to keep working at that pace, I had to keep eating to keep myself numb and to keep the energy up. I would let off steam with drinking. So it was a whole spiral of self-harm: the work, the relationships, the food, how I related to my body, how I treated myself, how I spoke about myself, the negative voice, the self-criticism, the judgment that I put on myself, that you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not thin enough. I was self-harming in that way. So I'm just going to pause for a moment, and just, if you relate to anything that I have said, any aspect of that, if you can just say yes. If you can relate to any aspect of self-harm, and this is also to make sure that my video is still working and that you're still watching. So if you can just say yes, if that applies to you, to any of that. My story is quite extreme. Thank you, Nikki. My story is quite extreme, and yours might not be so extreme. Thank you. Yours might not be so extreme, but if you can have a think through your life and through your lifetime, identify the moments in which you have harmed yourself, in which you haven't respected or valued yourself. Thank you. So some of you can relate to this. Some of you can relate to, harming, shutting yourself up with food. And I think for women, often food is such a big thing and an easy tool with which to harm ourselves, as well as to comfort ourselves. So let's talk about the opposite, about self-care. I had to go on a huge journey of transformation. I had to dismantle all those behaviors that I've talked about. I had to understand the root causes of them all. The root cause was the same. It was this sense of being faulty, not being worthy, that there was something wrong with me. There was something fundamentally wrong with me. And that came from my childhood. And children are very sensitive, and when things go wrong, we think it's our fault. We think we're faulty, and that was my story. So when my parents divorced, I thought it was my fault. I also treated myself throughout my life, and I still do on occasion. I treated myself how I was treated. So we do unto ourselves what was done to us. So if you were treated ambivalently, if you were loved ambivalently, sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you were cared for ambivalently, sometimes yes, sometimes no, the likelihood is that you struggle to love yourself consistently, to care for yourself consistently. So that might ring a bell. You might struggle you might do really well for a while with your self-care, and then you struggle with the consistency. You might sort of start losing weight, and then you sabotage. or you might do yoga every morning for a week or two, and then you sabotage, or we go on a meditation retreat and it's wonderful for the week, and then we come back and then we just lose it. So loving ourselves and caring for ourselves consistently is going to be a challenge if we were cared for inconsistently, if we were cared for ambivalently. I mention that because awareness is the power. Awareness is our tool. Awareness is really, really important. Because if we can understand why we give up on ourselves, why we let ourselves down, if we can relate it to how we were treated, it makes sense to us. We understand it, we get it. And it makes it easier to change. It makes it easier to change the behavior. We can think, okay, I'm doing this to myself because this was done to me. And in that moment, we have to become our parent. We have to become our loving parent. So we have to sort of divide ourselves. We already have this. We have our inner child, and we have to become our parent. So we have to parent ourselves consistently. And this is challenging because often we are doing to ourselves what was not done to us. We weren't shown this model. So we have to really take care with this. We have to give it time. We have to give it energy. We have to put in place some supportive mechanisms that are going to help us do to us what wasn't done to us. We are going to need to be gentle, not beat ourselves up if we don't get it right, but always think about, how can I love myself consistently? How can I nurture myself consistently? How can I consistently take care of myself? So in terms of self-care, we have to find our own way as well. There's no point me telling you my routine. I will tell you some of my self-caring routine, but you have to find your own. You have your answers. I always say this to my coaching clients, I'm there to support, but you have your answers. You have your answers on the inside. I'm there to help you find them. So you can find your self-caring routine, what works for you. For me, it's about always asking myself, is this in my best interests? Am I acting in my best interests? Is this what my best friend would do? Is this what my best friend would tell me to do? Is this how I would treat a vulnerable child? Is this how I would treat someone who depended on me? Is this how I would treat a small child? So asking yourself those questions. So having a self-caring routine and starting small, and if you don't have one, starting with baby steps. So in my groups and on Facebook, I talk a lot about meditation, and I appreciate that for many of us, meditation doesn't come easy. It definitely didn't come easy to me. I told you a little bit about my history. I used to be a political journalist. I used to report on politics and travel with the Prime Minister, and I used to have a pretty much around the clock, very busy, adrenaline-fueled job. I was always on the go. And if I wasn't on the go, my mind was always on the go. So meditation was something that I just didn't think I would ever manage to do. But I have been on this journey for 15 years now, this personal development journey, and I am a completely different, I'm the same me, but I have a different aura. I have a different, there is more peace. I have more peace, not all the time. Sometimes I'm completely crazy in my own head, obsessively thinking, freaking out about stuff. But in general, I have a lot more peace. And that has come from learning to sit still, learning to sit with my feelings, learning to listen to my feelings and to what my body, mind, soul, spirit needs in that moment. So I try and start my day with some form of connection to self, because I think in order to know what our needs are so that we can care for them, we need to be connected to ourselves. So I generally start my day with finding a way to connect to myself. So that might be sitting still in meditation. It might be using a meditation app such as Headspace, mindfulness. It might be searching a video on YouTube about inner child, healing your inner child. Sometimes I watch something like that, or connecting to yourself, or grounding. I might find something like that. If I don't want to sit still, I go, fortunately I live by the beach, which has been part of my life transformation. So I'll go to the beach and I'll do maybe a gentle jog or a walk. I'll sit in the sand dunes, I'll watch the sea, sometimes I swim in the sea. Connection to myself, connection to my body, my mind, my soul, my spirit, so that I know what I need, so that I know what I am feeling. So when I know what I'm feeling, I know how I need to look after myself, because I might be feeling really good, but I might be feeling really sad or really angry. But because I don't like those feelings, I'll do whatever I can to escape them. So I'll run from them, I'll work too hard, I'll busy myself, because I don't want to feel sad or angry. But the feelings are there anyway, and they'll sabotage my day, and they'll sabotage my life, and they'll sabotage my relationships unless I connect with them. So beginning with some sort of connection to self is really important. I'm just going to pause and ask does that make sense to you? If it makes sense, say yes. If you can see how that connection to self could aid in your self-care by identifying your feelings. It's really important. It's really important not to run away from our feelings, which is what I did for ages. Thank you, Nikki. So yeah, you can relate to that. So connecting to our feelings. So some form of morning routine. I also, over the 15 years that I've been doing, thank you, I've been doing this work. Excuse me while I take a drink of water. Over the 15 years that I've been doing this work on myself and with others, connecting to something greater than myself. I feel like I'm going to cough. Nikki, should I pause for a moment and come back? Thank you. So we were just talking about meditation, and thank you for the comments. I won't say your name because then, to keep the anonymity, but thank you for the comments that you can relate to this and to the sense of that question. I love that question too. Is this in my best interests? And we were just on meditation. I talked about how much I struggled with that. And Nikki reminded me that, it's not about when we have busy minds and we try and sit in meditation, we think, I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing it right, because the thoughts keep coming. But it's just about observing them and letting them come and noticing, oh, I've got a thought, and letting it go again. And that it sort of elevates us above our thoughts, and we can observe ourselves. And it's a way to get out of our heads, because we're kind of above our heads, if that makes sense. We're observing, and we just observe the thought, let it pass, and then the next one. And we think, oh, I'm thinking about that. Oh, my mind has been distracted. And then we bring it back to the breath or to whatever we're listening to. So even if you struggle with meditation, believe me, if I can do it, you can do it. So, but it doesn't have to be sitting still, as I was saying. You might want to walk outside, but a mindful walk, a walk in which you are really observing the things around you. So I do this on my retreats. I do mindful walks in the morning on the beach. And again, it's about getting out of our heads and getting into all of our senses. So watching the sea, listening to the waves, listening to the crunch of the shells beneath our feet, seeing the bird, observing the colors, I went for a walk the other day and I was near the beach and I saw the vibrancy of this blossom, and I really saw the colours, and I saw the blue of the sky, and I thought, I didn't used to see this. I didn't used to see these colours. I didn't used to smell these flowers. I didn't stop to smell the roses. So really getting in touch with the other senses is a great way to be more mindful. As one of you have just commented, sometimes when we're beating ourselves up because we can't silence our minds, it's just another way of thinking that we've let ourselves down, or that being disappointed with ourselves. Just something else to add to the list of the reasons why we're not good enough. So don't use meditation to beat yourself up. Find the way that works for you and do it imperfectly, imperfectly. It's good enough. It's absolutely good enough. So self-care, the first thing I'm talking about is around that connection to self. So that when we're connected to ourselves and our feelings, we can identify what we need. What are my needs for today? How do I want my day to be? Am I feeling sad or angry? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling tired? How can I connect to those feelings? And once we've connected to our feelings and our needs, we can do our very best to meet them. Now, I've been doing this for a long time and it's far from perfect, my sort of self-care routine, but I know what I'm doing to myself, and that is the first little victory. So for example, I used to be a workaholic. I still am. I love what I do now, absolutely love it, but I can do it. I can do it workaholically. I can do it compulsively. I can stare at the computer screen too long. When I push myself beyond my own limit, so there's a moment when I'm working and my body is telling me, Catherine, you need to take a break, you need to go for a walk, you need some fresh air, you need to stop working. When I push through that, when I ignore myself, what happens is I need something to keep me going, and I'll eat something. Now, I don't binge eat like I used to, but I will have something small to pick me up, to keep me going. Now, if we have a problem with food, that will just carry on. We'll just end up carrying on eating, and it's, you know, that, and then we'll beat ourselves up and it'll be that terrible spiral. So what I really need to do in that moment is not to go and eat something in order to keep working. It's to stop working and go for a walk, take some time out. I really struggle to do that, but I am aware that in that moment that I stand up and go and get some, whatever it is, piece of toast or some biscuits, that in that moment I am going against my best interests. My best interests are to take a break, but instead I'm having a Kit Kat, if you get the joke. So that it's about taking the time to listen to yourself, really listen to yourself. That's why meditation is so important, because it slows us down. We listen to our breathing, we listen to ourselves, and we think, yep, that's what I need. That's what I need. If we've had a lifetime of of not listening to our needs and going against them, we have to, we start slowly, baby steps. We are turning the ship around. We are changing our patterns, and we are really going against the grain, in many cases, going against a lifetime of habits. Really going against what we might have been doing for a long time. Is this in my best interest? So I was also going to talk about briefly, another part of my morning or daily routine is to connect to something greater than myself. So that can feel like an odd concept for some of us. And it can be whatever you want, but I find that when I find a connection with something greater than myself, it takes the pressure off. I'm no longer in control of absolutely everything. There's somebody or something that's got my back. So it could be universe, God, nature, your higher self, your beautiful, free, higher self. Or it could be you know, something outside like God, or whatever works for you. But I find that sense of something greater than myself. I find it at the sea. I find it in the crashing waves, in the power of the sea, in the vast horizon. And I feel so much less anxious and connected to myself and to others, and freer. And it gives me peace. It gives me peace. And when I'm in a peaceful place, it's much easier for me to meet my needs. Much easier for me to meet my needs. So another aspect of self-care, I talked about this in my video the other day, but I'm going to use my tree analogy again, which some of you will be familiar with. So, you know, if you're near a window right now, take a look outside and have a look at a tree. I can see one in the garden. What does that tree need? Or if you're in your house, maybe there's a plant. What does the plant need? So the tree needs sunshine, water, nourishment. It needs all that nourishment to flourish. You will have seen a tree that has died. You will have seen a plant that has withered, wilted, and died. And you will have seen one that's flourishing, that's blooming, that's blossoming. We want to flourish and bloom and blossom. So what do we need? It's as simple as thinking, what does a tree need? So what do I need? If you think about a tree, it needs roots. And sometimes some of the things that we're missing are roots. And we can find our roots, can find them in two ways. One, by finding ways to feel more grounded. So if you've done any yoga, you'll know about that sense of feeling grounded, putting your feet firmly on the floor, connecting to that lifetime of power in the earth that's been there forever, well before us, and it'll continue long after us. That feeling of groundedness. You could go barefoot on the grass or on the beach, feeling grounded, connected to something much greater than yourself. But there might be a different way of having roots, and it might be about finding your tribe, having a network, a supportive network of friends or family, especially if we don't have children and if we are single. A lot of the women I work with have those two things going on, no children and single, and we can feel rootless. So we find our roots inside ourselves and by having supportive networks. And I believe, you know, if you look at the tree, trees need strong roots, and that's how they stand tall. And that could be an act of self-care for ourselves. So finding ways to feel grounded and potentially creating more of a supportive network where we can feel part of, we can feel a sense of belonging, a sense of connectedness. And the other things are, you know, what are the things that we need? The sleep, the food, the good nourishment. So are we getting good nourishment? Water is so simple, but I can find myself going almost all day without drinking a glass of water. If I've got a bottle by my desk, I'll drink it. If I don't, I can just go the whole day and I think I haven't drunk any water. And I have a terrible habit of making cups of tea and then not drinking them. So around the house, there's always half a cup of peppermint tea. Why didn't I take the time? Why didn't I take the break? Stand up for 10 minutes, go and make a cup of tea, drink it, drink the cup of tea, which requires sitting still, drinking the water. Do I need daylight? Do I need sunshine? Do I need laughter, fun, joy? What do I need to blossom and flourish like the tree? And on my retreats, we do this exercise. I've also run it in my groups around, I ask you to draw your tree as you are today, and to draw the tree that you would like to be. And how do you get from tree A to tree B? What do you need? Do you need stronger roots? Do you need more water, more nourishment, more fun, more joy, more light, more sunshine? What do you need? So that's something you could do. You could imagine yourself as a tree. Are you flourishing? Are your branches full of leaves? Do you feel a bit wilted? Do you feel a bit diminished? rootless. And how can you change that? How can you change that? And in order to continue to grow our self-esteem and self-worth, we have to continue to do these things consistently, which is what I talked about at the beginning. Another way to build our self-worth through self-care, we could use affirmations. So we could affirm to ourselves that we are worthy, that we are valuable, that we are good enough, that we are beautiful. But affirmations might not work for all of us. They don't always work for me. I do try them, but they don't always work for me. What works for me are actions. So rather than affirming to myself that I am worthy, good enough, I show myself through my actions. So that means, as I've said, that means pausing, taking time out of work, giving energy to the stuff that really, really inspires me. So, you know, I love the work that I'm doing now, but I used to write about politics. It didn't feed me. When I got to the stage where it wasn't feeding me, I wasn't being authentic. And it was a real act of self-love and self-worth to find the courage to leave that job, leave the status, and find a new path. But even on this new path, I can ignore my heart's desires. I can demonstrate, or I can fail to demonstrate to myself that I am worthy because I'm not taking care of myself. So I have a desire to write another book, and I have been talking about this for a little bit, and I've been procrastinating and I've been afraid. But yesterday I started writing. I'm experimenting with fiction, and I wrote 800 words yesterday and another 600 words today. So that is one of my dreams. And I show myself that I am worthy and valuable by my actions, by investing in my dreams, by doing the things that I'm talking about, that I want, by making my life happen. You know, one of my dreams was to live by the sea. I made that happen. It required a lot of courage and change, but I am delighted that I made that happen. So another act of self-care to build your self-worth is to identify your dreams. So you can do that through meditation, you can do that through journaling. You can, how can you identify your dreams? Look around you. What makes you excited, and what do you envy? You know, when somebody says, oh, I've just written my book, or I've just put on a play at the theatre, or I've just painted this painting, or I've just become a personal trainer. When you feel envious, that I want to do that, that's your dream. That is your dream. And how can you make that happen? That is calling to you for a reason. It really is. And you will find that's where you'll find your freedom and your authenticity. And if you are not in a relationship, you know, I talk about this a lot. I had to find my authentic self and my authentic career, and leave a career that was a bit of a front, a bit of a mask, a bit of a status thing. I had to leave those and find my authentic place before I found love. And I believe sometimes that's the same for others. So that is, and you know, that builds our self-worth. We might not have the children that we wanted. And I'm not saying that a book or a business is a replacement for a baby. It isn't, but it gives us our self-worth because we have identified our dreams and we have gone for them and we have made them happen. And if our plan A didn't work out, which might have been to have a family, we can find our self-worth in our plan B. I know Jodie Day talks a lot about and has workshops on the plan B. And I also do the midlife mentoring around finding that thing that's going to light your fire. So that builds our self-worth. So when we walk into that room that's full of mothers or pregnant women or children, and we are tempted to feel less than or less worthy, if we can own our lives, own our journeys, own our own the things that we have made happen because that didn't happen, I believe we will find those situations much easier to cope with and to deal with. There are loads of other self-care things I could talk about, but I'm going to start wrapping up. My book is all about self-care. So there are loads of tips in there around loving yourself, connecting to yourself, finding your inner oak tree, acting in your best interests. One more thing before I wrap up is about another mantra, which I find useful, is we teach people how to treat us. So if we are treating ourselves as valuable people, which means if we're employed, we're taking our lunch breaks, we're leaving on time, we're saying no to too much work, that kind of thing. Or if we're setting our boundaries with people and saying, no, I don't want to do that, or no, please don't speak to me like that. We are teaching people to treat us as valuable because we are acting as though we are valuable. So have a think about your relationships, your work relationships, your family, your friend or partner relationships. Are you acting as a valuable person? Are you teaching people that you are valuable by the way that you treat yourself? I believe that's a huge act of self-care, self-love that really builds our self-worth. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to allow you some time to ask questions. As you write your questions, I probably will carry on talking. Yeah, just to say, I have a free Facebook group called Being Real, Becoming Whole, which you'd be very welcome to join if you're not in it. I have my book, How to Fall in Love, A 10-Step Journey to the Heart, and I have retreats and workshops and coaching. So if you have any questions or if anything has really resonated, I would love to hear them. So yeah, one of our participants is talking about when she prioritizes herself, it feels really uplifting. The challenge is to keep it at the forefront of her thinking. Yeah. So keeping it at the forefront of your thinking. And that is about being consistent with how you treat yourself. And you know, that morning routine will really help with that, I believe. It's so easy to fall out of bed, fall into our clothes, rush out the door. But having a morning routine, even if it's 5 to 10 minutes, I think it will help to keep that in the forefront of your thinking. Yes, Nikki, please do. I think that will help to keep it in the forefront.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, I think it does, most certainly. And I've been scribbling so many notes whilst I've been making comments on Facebook because I am so fascinated by all of this. I really don't know where to start, apart from to say, if you would like to, I would love to do a specific interview with you about some of these comments for these concepts and stuff for the magazine.
Oh, wonderful!
Because I'm just, as I say, I've got so many thoughts and things. What I would like to say, I've made a few notes, is congratulations on starting your next book. That's so exciting. No pressure. However, I can't wait to read it.
Oh, bless you.
The other thing is I love that idea about putting your energy into what you love and your dreams.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Andrew only a few days ago that we are working so many hours at the moment doing the summit and getting the next issue of the magazine out. And I'm still loving it. I'm still motivated. I'm energized. I'm absolutely exhausted. However, the adrenaline is keeping me going because we're loving it so much. We're doing what we can to give ourselves self-care as we go along. On Sunday and Monday, that really kicks in because I know that we'll get that sort of adrenaline withdrawal afterwards. So I know that we've got to be very careful after them. But I love the idea about the fact that you put your energy into what you love, and then miraculous things can happen, special things happen.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me when I started writing just yesterday and today. You know, this is something that I love. I've always been a writer from a child. This is something that I love. Why aren't I doing it?
Yeah.
Why aren't I doing it? And then even though I only did 20 minutes today, the self-esteem that I got, the self-worth that I got for that, because I was cherishing my dream
Yeah.
and I was not self-sabotaging. And it's amazing what it does for us. And it's so easy to not do this stuff. I know how easy it is to not do the stuff that we really want to do. And I was, as I say, I was afraid to open my computer and see my words, but I did it. So I'd encourage everyone to go for it.
Yeah, it is, even if you are not writing to publish.
Yeah.
There is just something so beneficial to putting words down on paper. I know it's going to be different for other people. However, I find that I process thoughts differently as I go through that physical thing of either typing or writing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's particularly when you're doing sort of anything to write to heal, you know, the emotional pain, etc. That it is, you know, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And what is going to sound really bizarre is that I know that one of the areas where I am failing in my own self-care is that I'm not taking enough time to write. And yet I am writing so much at the moment because of the magazine. But for me, that's different.
Yeah.
You know, for me, the elements of self-care in, you know, the self-care element of writing for me is going back to my novels.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the CNBC stuff, it's not the infertility stuff, it's the novels which are inside of me.
Yeah.
And one of those novels is semi-autobiographical, and it's actually called The Tree Keeper's Daughter.
Aww.
And I am the daughter. So I love your analogy with trees and things. I'm going to go back and listen to that a lot and see what elements of that I can sort of draw into my story. And the other thing is the concept that you said about the fact that we teach other people how to treat us. I know that that's true. However, I hadn't really sort of spelt it out to myself in that way. And I think it's very important for us to actually realise that, you know, if we undervalue ourselves, then other people are going to undervalue ourselves. You know, if we don't prioritise time for ourselves, then we can't expect other people to consider our time to be important either. Yeah, so important. And that's really, as I say, I could go on for another 4 hours. However, I won't.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your comments. Yeah, yes, you can. Somebody said it's been a peace-inducing session, and yeah, we all deserve it. We all deserve our dreams, and we deserve our sense of self-worth. So I'm wishing you all the best on your own journey to that. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and if you have any questions for me, do get in touch, Katherine at katherinebaldwin.com, or check out howtofallinlove.co.uk for information on my work and my book and retreats and so forth. And so I'll just close by saying thank you to everyone who watched, and thank you very much to the sponsors of the We Are Worthy Summit, as without the sponsors this wouldn't be able to take place.